She walked into the large, echoing hall, her fingers lightly clutching the edges of her worn sheet music. The room smelled faintly of polished wood and piano polish, a smell that reminded her of the small room where she had spent countless hours practicing in her childhood home. The lights were bright, and the murmurs of the other students and teachers filled the space. She could feel the energy of the place, buzzing with talent, with people who had trained for years to reach this level. Yet, she moved forward with quiet confidence, her steps steady and calm, as if she belonged there even though she knew very few eyes were on her. The teacher at the front of the hall, a strict woman known for her sharp judgments and high standards, looked at her with a mixture of curiosity and doubt. She handed her the sheet music for the hardest piano piece in the entire curriculum, the piece that had made many students cry and give up. The teacher's eyes flicked with skepticism, thinking the young woman would find it impossible to play. There was a small, almost imperceptible smile on the teacher's face, one that suggested a challenge, one that suggested, "Let's see if you can do this." The young woman nodded politely, her eyes scanning the music quickly. She didn't speak, didn't argue, didn't make a sound that would reveal her feelings. Inside, she felt the familiar rush of excitement. She loved challenges. She had spent years practicing in secret, often playing pieces that even her teachers at her local music school said were too difficult for someone her age. She had learned that the world often underestimated quiet people, and that the loudest voices were not always the most talented. She had learned to let her fingers speak, to let her music tell the story that words could not. Around her, the other students whispered. Some laughed softly, thinking this new girl didn't stand a chance. Some shook their heads and muttered about how they had struggled with this piece for months, some even years, and had never played it perfectly. The hall felt heavy with doubt and judgment, but she ignored it all. She focused on the piano waiting for her at the far end of the hall, its black and white keys gleaming under the stage lights. The audience, made up of students, teachers, and a few parents, leaned forward in their chairs, eager to see what would happen. She stepped closer to the piano, her fingers grazing the keys as if greeting old friends. The other students tried to peek at her hands, expecting hesitation, expecting mistakes, but her fingers moved naturally, lightly, as if they had known the keys for a lifetime. She took a deep breath, not out of nervousness, but out of habit, a small ritual she had developed during countless hours of practice in the quiet of her home. This ritual centered her, reminded her that she was ready, that she had prepared for this moment without anyone knowing. Her mind drifted back to her childhood. She had started playing piano when she was very young, her parents encouraging her curiosity but never pushing her too hard. She would sneak into the small room in their home, a room filled with old sheet music and a piano that had seen better days, and play for hours. At first, it was simple tunes, children's songs, and melodies she remembered from the radio. Then, she discovered more complex pieces, works that were far beyond her age, compositions that challenged her every day. She would practice late into the night, her small fingers pressing the keys, her eyes focused, not on praise or applause, but on the music itself. Her parents often didn't know how hard she worked, how much she loved it, and she didn't need them to. The music was her world, and she was at home in it. Back in the hall, the murmurs grew louder. Some students leaned toward each other, whispering guesses about whether she could even complete the piece. Others looked down at their own music, doubting themselves, wondering if they could have done what she might attempt. The teacher's eyes remained fixed on her, calculating, measuring, waiting for the moment when she might falter. But she didn't falter. She simply sat down on the bench, adjusted her posture, and let her hands rest lightly on the keys. She began to play. The first notes were soft, almost tentative, but there was a clarity in them that made people stop and listen. She didn't rush, didn't force the music. She let it flow naturally, each note connecting to the next, each phrase telling a story. The audience felt a shift in the room. The other students, who had been certain she would fail, leaned forward, surprised by the precision and ease with which she played. The teacher's eyebrows rose slightly, a hint of acknowledgement that perhaps she had underestimated this young woman. As the piece progressed, Her fingers danced across the keys with incredible skill. Every chord, every scale, every intricate pattern came effortlessly, yet it carried weight and emotion. The music was not just notes on a page. It was a conversation, a story unfolding in real time. The young woman had a way of bringing life to the composition, of making the audience feel the emotion behind each passage. Some listeners closed their eyes, letting the music fill the space around them, feeling the tension and release, the highs and lows, the moments of quiet reflection and bursts of power. She played for what felt like hours, though in reality, it was only a few minutes. The hardest passages, the ones that had made so many students give up, were executed flawlessly. Her hands moved with confidence and control, each finger knowing exactly where to be, what to do. The audience began to whisper in awe, unable to contain their surprise. They had never seen someone approach this piece with such mastery, such understanding. She was not just playing the notes. She was living them, breathing them, letting the music speak through her. When she finally finished, there was a moment of silence, a collective intake of breath, as if the hall itself was stunned. Then came the applause, slow at first, then building into a thunderous wave of appreciation. People stood, clapping, some even wiping tears from their eyes, moved by the beauty and power of the performance. The young woman rose from the bench, bowing slightly, a humble smile on her face. She didn't boast, didn't seek attention. She simply acknowledged the music, the audience, and the moment, knowing that her work, her practice, and her love for piano had brought her here. After the performance, the teacher approached her, no longer skeptical but impressed. She asked quietly about her training, about how she had learned to play with such skill and emotion. The young woman explained that she had practiced in private, dedicating herself to the piano without seeking recognition. Her talent had been hidden, not because she wanted it to be, but because she had always believed that music was something to be shared, not to prove something to others. The teacher nodded, understanding that this quiet, unassuming student had surpassed everyone's expectations. The other students watched in awe, some in disbelief. They realized that talent often hides in the most unexpected places, that quiet dedication can produce extraordinary results, and that assumptions based on appearances are often wrong. The young woman had walked into that hall without fanfare, without arrogance, and had left a lasting impression, showing everyone that true mastery is not always visible until it is revealed. She packed her sheet music, her hands still tingling with the energy of the performance, and left the hall with a quiet confidence, ready for whatever challenge might come next, knowing that she had proven something not just to others, but to herself. After her stunning performance, the young woman returned to her small practice room in the academy, her heart still racing with the thrill of the applause. Even though she had performed perfectly, she felt no sense of pride or arrogance. For her, the music was never about recognition or approval. It was about connection, about expressing something that words could never capture. She sat on the edge of the bench, taking a deep breath, letting the vibrations of the piano keys linger in her mind. The room was quiet, almost peaceful, and for a moment, she allowed herself to relax. Outside the practice room, the other students whispered amongst themselves. They had watched her play and could not believe what they had seen. Some shook their heads in disbelief, muttering about how they had struggled with that same piece for months. Others admitted quietly that they had never imagined anyone could play it with such ease and emotion. The young woman had shown them that talent could be hidden behind the most ordinary appearances, that quiet dedication often outshines loud confidence. Yet, none of them truly knew the extent of her skill, or the countless hours she had spent in solitude mastering music that most could only dream of playing. The teachers gathered in a corner of the hall, exchanging hushed comments about the extraordinary performance. They discussed her technique, her control, and her emotional depth. Some of them were intrigued, while others were slightly embarrassed by their earlier doubts. One teacher, known for being especially critical, admitted that he had underestimated her and that her performance had reminded him that assumptions can be misleading. They all agreed on one thing. She was special, someone whose talent deserved recognition, yet they also sensed that there was much more to her than anyone had seen. Meanwhile, she unpacked her music case and placed her sheets carefully on the table. She knew that soon, people would come to ask her questions, wanting to know how she had achieved such mastery. But she was patient. She believed that talent revealed itself in the right time, that the world would recognize her abilities when it was ready to see them. She recalled her early lessons at home, when she had discovered the joy of complex rhythms and intricate melodies. She remembered practicing late into the night, often losing track of time, her fingers moving instinctively across the keys. Those moments had been private, deeply personal, yet they had shaped her into the pianist she had become. As the evening progressed, a few students approached her cautiously. They complimented her performance, their voices tinged with awe and curiosity. Some of them asked how long she had been playing, or if she had studied at prestigious schools before. She smiled gently, answering in simple, honest words. She explained that she had always practiced in private, learning by listening, observing, and repeating until the music felt like a part of her. Her responses were modest, revealing nothing of the discipline and sacrifices that had gone into her mastery. She wanted them to understand that success was not just talent, but persistence, focus, and love for what one does. One of the more confident students, who had once considered herself the best in the academy, watched from a distance. She felt a mix of jealousy and admiration, struggling to reconcile her own insecurities with the brilliance she had witnessed. The young woman had not only performed a difficult piece flawlessly but had also brought a level of emotion and subtlety that few could achieve. This student realized that being the best required more than technique. It required heart, dedication, and an understanding that went beyond mere notes on a page. In her quiet corner, the young woman began to play again, softly, almost meditatively. She did not aim to impress anyone this time. She played for herself, letting the music flow naturally, exploring each note, each phrase, each pause. The room seemed to breathe with her, the sound resonating against the walls, filling every corner with its warmth. She played scales and arpeggios, improvising melodies that revealed her creativity and deep understanding of the piano. Every note she played was intentional, yet effortless, a testament to years of disciplined practice and a genuine love for the art. As she played, she reflected on the doubts of others. She had grown accustomed to people underestimating her, to the whispers and side glances that implied she was ordinary. But she had learned that true mastery did not require validation. It was built in quiet moments, in the hours of unseen effort, in the persistence to continue even when no one was watching. That understanding gave her a calm strength, one that made her approach each challenge with poise rather than fear. The hardest pieces, the ones that scared others, were her opportunities to shine because she had nothing to prove, only music to express. Her thoughts drifted to her family, who had always supported her curiosity but had not fully grasped the depth of her talent. They had provided encouragement, but she had discovered the piano on her own terms, creating her own path, developing a style that was uniquely hers. That independence had taught her resilience, patience, and creativity. It had taught her that the joy of music comes not from applause but from the connection between the player and the instrument, between the sound and the soul. The next day, she returned to the academy, her mind clear and focused. The hallways were filled with students practicing scales, rehearsing pieces, and preparing for upcoming performances. Yet she moved with an ease that made her presence almost invisible. She had learned that visibility was not necessary for impact. One's work spoke louder than appearances. As she entered the main hall, a teacher called her over, asking if she would be willing to demonstrate her technique for a small group of advanced students. She agreed without hesitation, understanding that sharing her knowledge was as important as playing for an audience. In the demonstration, she approached the piano and began to play another challenging piece, one that tested both speed and precision. The students watched closely, taking mental notes, but it quickly became clear that she was in a league of her own. Her fingers moved with clarity, each note crisp and deliberate. Yet it was not only her technical skill that impressed them. It was the fluidity and emotion in her playing, the way she made even the most complex sequences feel natural. Some students were inspired, Others felt a pang of self-doubt, but all were captivated by her performance. After the demonstration, a few students gathered around her, asking questions about her approach, her practice routines, and how she had developed such skill. She spoke with patience and humility, emphasizing focus, patience, and dedication. She shared small techniques, little habits that had helped her over the years, and encouraged them to find their own rhythm and style. She made them realize that while technique is important, the heart behind the music is what makes a performance unforgettable. She reminded them that mastery was a journey, not a destination, and that each person's path would be unique. Throughout the day, she continued to practice, not out of pressure, but out of genuine love for the piano. Her hands grew tired, but her mind remained sharp, her focus unwavering. She explored new compositions, experimented with different interpretations, and allowed herself moments of reflection, thinking about how each piece could tell a story. Her ability to connect with the music so deeply set her apart from her peers, many of whom were talented but lacked the same emotional connection. By evening, the students and teachers had begun to see her not just as a newcomer, but as someone extraordinary, a musician whose skill was matched by her humility and dedication. The whispers that had followed her performance the day before had turned into admiration, and some even sought guidance, hoping to learn from her example. Yet she remained quiet, letting her actions and her music speak louder than words. She understood that true influence does not come from seeking attention, but from consistently demonstrating excellence and passion. As the lights dimmed and the academy quieted, she packed her music and left the hall, her mind already planning her next practice. The day had been filled with observation, reflection, and sharing knowledge, yet she felt fulfilled. She knew that her journey was just beginning, that each challenge she faced would test her skill, her patience, and her heart. And she welcomed each one, confident in her ability to meet them, not for recognition, but because music was her life, and she could not imagine living without it. The day of the recital had arrived, and the hall was filled with anticipation. Students, teachers, and a few parents had gathered to witness the performances, chatting quietly and waiting for their turn or for the next act to begin. The young woman walked into the room, her hands lightly resting on her music case, her posture calm and composed. She felt the familiar stir of excitement and nervous energy, but it was not fear. She welcomed the challenge as she always had. The hall had an atmosphere of expectation, but she focused only on the piano waiting for her at the center of the stage. As she approached, whispers filled the audience. Some students were skeptical, doubting that anyone could play the piece she had been given. Others remembered her previous performance in the academy and were curious to see if it was just a lucky moment or the real skill of a hidden talent. Teachers watched her carefully, their faces a mixture of curiosity and judgment. They expected a struggle, a few mistakes, or hesitation. She had walked into this hall quietly, unnoticed, and now all eyes were upon her, waiting for a revelation. She took a seat on the bench, her fingers hovering above the keys, and closed her eyes for a moment. She remembered the countless hours she had spent alone with the piano, the long nights when the world outside did not exist, the music filling every corner of her life. Those memories grounded her. She let her fingers fall onto the keys, starting with a soft, deliberate touch. The first notes rang clearly through the hall, simple yet confident, and the audience immediately fell silent, drawn in by the purity of the sound. The piece began to unfold. At first, the notes were steady, almost delicate, but as her confidence and memory guided her, the complexity of the composition emerged. Her fingers moved with a precision that seemed effortless, flowing from one chord to the next, executing intricate patterns that had challenged so many others before her. The room, once filled with murmurs and whispers, became absorbed in the music. Each person present felt the subtle emotion in every note, the ebb and flow of tension and release, the way the melody told a story that words could not express. Other students watched in disbelief. Some had practiced this piece for months, yet she played it as if it were second nature. Their own doubts and insecurities surfaced as they realized the depth of her ability. They had expected hesitation, perhaps a faltering in the difficult passages, But she was seamless, every note perfectly in place, yet expressive and alive. The quiet girl, the newcomer, had transformed into a force that commanded attention, not through words, but through the music itself. Teachers leaned forward in their seats, eyes wide with surprise. They noted the technique, the control, and most importantly, the emotion. It was not enough to play the notes correctly. The way she breathed life into them set her apart. She was not just performing. She was telling a story, inviting everyone into the world she created with each keystroke. Some teachers felt a pang of humility, recognizing that they had underestimated her, and now the truth of her talent was undeniable. The young woman's mind, however, was not on the audience or the reactions around her. She focused on the music, on the sensations of her fingers on the keys, on the subtle changes in tempo and dynamics that gave the piece life. She remembered the countless nights of practice, the small victories when a difficult passage finally made sense, the slow mastery of speed and control. All of it had led to this moment, where preparation met opportunity, where patience met the chance to shine. And she was ready. As the piece progressed, the audience became more than just observers. Some closed their eyes, letting the music fill their senses completely. Others leaned forward, unable to contain their awe at the technical brilliance and emotional depth before them. Parents who had come expecting a simple recital were surprised by the intensity and sophistication of the performance. It was clear to everyone that this was no ordinary student, no ordinary performance. This was a revelation. She played the most challenging sections with grace, her fingers moving faster than most thought possible, yet every note landed perfectly. The difficult trills, rapid scales, and arpeggios that had once intimidated so many now flowed naturally, like water over smooth stones. The audience could see the passion in her posture, the gentle sway as she followed the rhythm, the way she connected with every note, every pause, every phrase. There was power in her play, but also subtlety, a balance that made the performance both thrilling and deeply moving. Midway through, a quiet murmur ran through the audience. Some recognized the sophistication of the interpretation, the nuanced use of dynamics, the control of phrasing. They whispered to each other, questioning how someone so young and seemingly ordinary could possess such mastery. She was rewriting expectations, challenging assumptions, and showing that brilliance is often hidden until revealed in the right moment. Every observer felt the weight of the music, as though they were part of a story being told by her hands. The young woman did not let the attention distract her. She remained focused, letting each note flow naturally, trusting in her preparation and instincts. She had spent years cultivating this skill, learning not just to play, but to understand the music deeply. She could feel the story, anticipate the transitions, and highlight the emotional arcs within the composition. Her mind and fingers worked in perfect harmony, creating a performance that seemed both effortless and profoundly moving. By the final passages, the energy in the hall had shifted completely. What had begun as curiosity and skepticism had transformed into admiration and awe. Students who had doubted her now watched in silence, recognizing that they were witnessing something extraordinary. Teachers who had once measured her potential now took notes in quiet amazement, inspired by the depth of her talent. Even casual observers felt the impact, the beauty, and the intensity of the music resonating within them. As the final note lingered in the air, there was a moment of absolute stillness. The audience seemed unable to breathe, suspended in the emotion and power of the performance. Then, gradually, applause erupted, starting quietly and swelling into a thunderous wave of appreciation. People rose to their feet, clapping, cheering, and some even moved to tears. She remained at the bench for a moment, letting the sound wash over her, acknowledging the connection she had created with everyone present. She did not bow immediately. She simply let the music and its impact speak for itself. Finally, she stood and bowed, a gentle, humble gesture that reflected her personality. The applause continued, and for the first time, the young woman felt a quiet satisfaction, not from the recognition itself, but from knowing that she had shared the music as she intended. The experience had been everything she loved about playing the piano. Challenging, expressive, and deeply human. She had turned a moment of expectation into a moment of revelation, and in doing so, she had shown that true talent often remains unseen until the right opportunity arrives. After the performance, teachers approached her, their expressions a mixture of admiration and respect. They asked questions about her training, her technique, and her approach to such a difficult piece. She answered modestly, explaining that she had spent years practicing in private, learning patience and persistence, and allowing the music to guide her rather than seeking recognition. Her words were simple, but they carried the wisdom of someone who had worked quietly and relentlessly, mastering both skill and understanding. Other students gathered, still amazed and inspired. They listened to her explanations, trying to understand how she had achieved what they had thought impossible. Some felt motivated to work harder, while others felt a quiet determination to refine their own skills. She spoke with encouragement, never arrogance, and reminded them that mastery was not about competing with others, but about connecting deeply with the music and with oneself. By the end of the evening, the young woman had not only performed a challenging piece, but had left an impression that would last in the minds of everyone present. She had shown that quiet dedication, hidden talent, and love for the art could create moments of pure brilliance. As she left the stage, her hands tingling from the intensity of the performance, she felt a calm sense of fulfillment. She had met the challenge, expressed herself fully, and shared the music in a way that only someone truly devoted could. The audience, teachers, and fellow students would remember this day, not just for the technical skill, but for the heart, emotion, and humanity she had brought to the piano. The room was still buzzing with excitement after the recital, but the young woman sat quietly in the corner, letting the energy settle. The applause, the cheers, and the whispers of astonishment had all washed over her, yet she remained calm, composed, almost serene. She had performed the piece as she always did, with focus and dedication, and now she could finally take a moment to reflect. Her hands still tingled from the intensity of the performance, but it was not fatigue that she felt. It was a sense of quiet satisfaction, a confirmation of years of private practice and unwavering commitment to her craft. Teachers and students alike were trying to comprehend what they had just witnessed. The hardest piece in the academy, the one considered nearly impossible, had been performed flawlessly and with deep emotion. Whispers of disbelief spread throughout the hall. Some students who had once been confident in their own abilities now felt humbled. Others were inspired, their eyes wide with wonder, as they realized that someone they had overlooked could possess such extraordinary skill. The young woman had not only executed the piece perfectly but had done so with a level of artistry that was rare, even among seasoned performers. A few teachers approached her cautiously, their curiosity and admiration evident. They asked about her background, how she had come to master such a difficult composition. She smiled gently and explained that she had spent years practicing in private, dedicating herself to the piano without seeking attention or recognition. She spoke of the countless hours spent at the piano, the quiet nights of exploration and learning, and the joy of discovering music in its purest form. Her words were simple, but they carried the weight of experience and a profound understanding of her art. The teachers listened intently, realizing that her talent was not just a result of natural ability, but also of patience, discipline, and a deep love for music. They acknowledged that they had underestimated her, and their respect for her grew with every word she spoke. They could see now that she was not just a talented student but a true musician, someone who understood the piano in a way that few ever would. The young woman's quiet demeanor and humility only added to the impression she left, showing that greatness often comes in unexpected forms. Among the students, some approached her nervously, wanting to learn from her, to understand how she had achieved such mastery. She welcomed their questions, sharing small techniques and habits that had helped her over the years. She encouraged them to find their own path, to focus on patience and dedication, and to let the music guide them rather than trying to impress others. Her advice was thoughtful and genuine, reflecting the values she had cultivated through years of disciplined practice. The students listened closely, absorbing not only her words, but also the presence of someone who had transformed quiet dedication into extraordinary skill. In the corner, a few of the more confident students who had once doubted her were struggling with their own emotions. They had been challenged by her performance, realizing that talent and skill were not always visible on the surface. Some felt a sense of envy, but most felt a deep respect and admiration. They recognized that she had shown them the true meaning of dedication and artistry, and that her performance had redefined their understanding of what was possible. The young woman had become a quiet role model, inspiring others without even trying. The audience, too, was still talking about the performance. Parents who had come expecting a simple recital were amazed by the depth and sophistication of her playing. Some discussed her technical precision, while others focused on the emotional resonance that seemed to fill the entire room. They were witnessing something rare, a display of mastery that combined both skill and heart. It was clear to everyone that this was not just a talented student, but someone destined for greatness. Someone whose music could touch hearts and leave a lasting impression. After a short while, the young woman was invited to perform for a small gathering of advanced students and teachers who wanted a more intimate demonstration of her skill. She agreed, approaching the piano with the same calm focus she had maintained all day. As she began to play, the room was filled with the same quiet intensity that had captivated the larger audience earlier. Every note was precise, every phrase carefully shaped, yet infused with emotion. The listeners could see her hands move effortlessly, each finger finding its place with natural grace. They felt the depth of her understanding, the connection between her mind, her heart, and the instrument. The demonstration was more than just a display of technical skill. It was a lesson in patience, discipline, and emotional expression. She played with a sensitivity that made even the most complex passages seem effortless. The advanced students were captivated, realizing that there was much more to music than speed and accuracy. They began to understand that true mastery involved understanding the story behind each note, feeling the emotion, and conveying it to the listener. They watched her closely, absorbing the subtle details of her technique and the care she put into every gesture. Teachers exchanged glances, impressed by the clarity and depth of her performance. They noted how she balanced power and delicacy, speed and control, technique and expression. Her playing was a revelation, showing that talent, when combined with dedication and love for the art, could produce results that surpassed even the highest expectations. They discussed her approach, her focus, and her emotional connection to the music, recognizing that she was a rare talent whose potential could only continue to grow. In the following days, word of her performance spread throughout the academy. Students and teachers alike talked about the young woman who had taken the hardest piece and played it with mastery and heart. Some students sought her guidance, hoping to learn from her example. Others reflected on their own practice and dedication, inspired to work harder and approach music with greater focus and passion. The young woman, however, remained humble, continuing her private practice and quietly sharing her knowledge with those who asked. She understood that her journey was ongoing, that there were always new challenges to meet, new pieces to explore, and new heights to reach. As she continued to practice and perform, the young woman became a symbol of dedication, skill, and humility. Her story inspired others to pursue their passions with patience and persistence, to focus on the work itself rather than the recognition it might bring. She showed that true talent often lies hidden, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. And when that moment comes, it can leave a lasting impression on everyone who witnesses it. Her experiences also reinforced the importance of perspective and understanding. Those who had doubted her learned that assumptions based on appearances can be misleading, that quiet individuals may possess extraordinary abilities, and that true mastery is often the result of consistent effort and love for the craft. The young woman's performance had not only impressed but also educated, showing that talent, dedication, and humility can coexist and create something truly remarkable. In private moments, she reflected on her journey, feeling grateful for the challenges she had faced and the opportunities she had been given. She thought of the hours of practice, the quiet nights, and the moments of doubt she had overcome. Each step had shaped her into the musician she had become, someone capable of sharing music with depth, emotion, and precision. She knew that her path would continue, that there would be new challenges and new audiences, but she was ready. She had proven to herself that her dedication and love for music could achieve extraordinary results. By the end of this chapter of her life, the young woman had transformed the perception of everyone around her. Teachers, students, and parents alike recognized her as a remarkable talent, someone whose skill and heart could not be overlooked. Yet she remained the same quiet, focused individual, letting her music speak for her. Her journey was far from over, but she had already left an indelible mark, showing that hidden talent, patience, and unwavering dedication could create moments of true brilliance and inspire others to pursue their own passions with sincerity and courage. The days following her extraordinary performance were filled with a quiet, steady transformation. Word had spread throughout the academy about the young woman who had played the hardest piece with ease and emotion, and soon she became a figure of curiosity, admiration, and inspiration. Teachers who had once doubted her now sought her out, asking her to play for special events, workshops, and advanced classes. She accepted with humility, never letting the recognition change her, always focusing on the music itself rather than the applause it brought. Students continued to watch her, some in awe, some in reflection, and some with quiet determination to improve their own skills. She became a source of guidance for those willing to listen, sharing small lessons about patience, practice, and emotional connection. She never offered shortcuts or tried to impress anyone. She simply demonstrated the value of dedication and love for the craft. Her quiet influence began to shift the culture within the academy, inspiring students to take music more seriously and to approach it with thoughtfulness and heart. The young woman spent hours every day at the piano, as she always had. She explored new pieces, challenged herself with compositions of increasing difficulty, and experimented with different interpretations. Each day was a chance to learn, to refine, and to deepen her understanding. She did not perform for the sake of recognition but for the joy of music, the thrill of discovering new ways to express emotion, and the satisfaction of mastering complexity. The piano was more than an instrument. It was a companion, a voice for the feelings she could not always put into words. As her reputation grew, invitations began to arrive from beyond the academy. Teachers and musicians from other schools, concert halls, and music societies wanted to see the young woman perform. Some were curious, some hopeful, and some skeptical, having heard only the stories of her skill. She accepted these invitations thoughtfully, understanding that each opportunity was not just a chance for recognition but a chance to share music, to communicate something meaningful to a new audience. Wherever she played, she remained grounded, humble, and focused, letting the music speak rather than her own accomplishments. During one particularly important performance, she was asked to play for a panel of professional musicians and critics. The hall was filled with individuals whose expertise and experience could recognize talent immediately. She approached the piano as she always did, quietly confident and entirely present. From the first note, the room was captivated. Her fingers moved with precision, but more importantly, with emotion. Every phrase told a story, every chord carried weight, and every pause allowed the audience to breathe and feel the music deeply. By the end of the performance, the panel was left speechless, applauding with genuine admiration and respect. They had witnessed someone whose ability transcended technical skill, someone who understood the piano in a way that few could ever hope to. Back at the academy, her students and peers continued to learn from her example. They saw that greatness was not about arrogance or seeking attention. It was about dedication, humility, and a connection to one's craft. She inspired them to work quietly but persistently, to find their own voice within the music, and to focus on the journey rather than the destination. Her influence extended beyond performance. It shaped attitudes, teaching approaches, and the way students approached practice and learning. In private moments, the young woman reflected on her journey. She thought about the nights spent alone with the piano, the hours of practice that had gone unnoticed, and the challenges she had faced without encouragement or acknowledgement. Each step had built her skill, patience, and resilience. She realized that her achievements were the result of more than talent alone. They were the product of persistence, focus, and a genuine love for music. These reflections reinforced her humility, reminding her that the joy of music was not in recognition but in the expression and exploration of it. Her family, who had always supported her curiosity, now understood the depth of her talent. They celebrated her achievements quietly, proud not only of her skill but of her character. They knew she did not seek fame or accolades but pursued her passion with sincerity and dedication. This understanding strengthened her connection to her roots, reminding her of the simple beginnings from which her talent had grown. It also reinforced the lesson she had always carried, that true success comes from dedication, integrity, and the love of what one does. As time went on, the young woman became known not just for her technical brilliance but for her artistry. She was invited to play at important recitals, competitions, and even community events, each performance leaving a lasting impact on the audience. Teachers, students, and music lovers alike spoke of her skill and the emotional depth of her playing. Yet she remained modest, never allowing the attention to overshadow the music itself. She understood that the true reward lay in the connection created through sound, the ability to move others, and the personal growth that came from striving for excellence. She also began mentoring other students more formally, teaching small groups about technique, expression, and interpretation. Her approach was patient and thoughtful, always encouraging exploration and creativity rather than conformity. She emphasized the importance of practice, reflection, and understanding the emotion behind the music. Students learned not just how to play, but how to feel, how to express, and how to connect with their audience. Her influence began to ripple outward, creating a culture of dedication and passion that extended beyond her own performances. Even with growing recognition and opportunities, she never lost sight of her original love for music. She continued to practice daily, exploring new compositions, experimenting with interpretation, and perfecting old favorites. Each note, each phrase, each performance was an opportunity to communicate, to connect, and to grow. She understood that mastery was not a final destination but a lifelong journey, and she embraced it with joy and humility. The piano remained a constant companion, a source of inspiration, and a reflection of her dedication. As her story spread, people from other schools and communities became aware of her talent. Musicians, critics, and students spoke of her performances with admiration, sharing stories of the quiet young woman who had amazed an entire academy with her mastery of the most challenging pieces. She became a symbol of dedication, humility, and the power of hidden talent. Her story inspired countless others to pursue their passions, to dedicate themselves to their craft, and to believe in the potential of persistence and love for what they do. The young woman continued to perform, teach, and practice, always grounded in the values that had brought her this far. She understood that recognition was fleeting, but the joy of music and the impact of her dedication were lasting. She sought not only to excel herself but to inspire, guide, and uplift others. Each performance was both a challenge and an opportunity, each lesson a chance to share wisdom and passion, and each day a step in a journey that had no true end but endless possibilities. By the time she was recognized as a piano legend within her circles, she had already achieved something far more important than fame or accolades. She had cultivated discipline, patience, creativity, and humility. She had inspired others, changed perceptions, and demonstrated that hidden talent, nurtured through dedication and love, could achieve extraordinary results. She had shown that greatness often comes quietly, revealed not through boastfulness, but through persistent effort, emotional connection, and a commitment to excellence. In the final reflection of her journey, she realized that the applause, the recognition, and the admiration were welcome, but not necessary. What mattered most was the music itself, the joy of creating it, and the ability to touch the hearts of others. She knew that her story, while extraordinary, was also a reminder to anyone willing to listen, that dedication, passion, humility, and patience can reveal talents that the world might never expect. And when those talents are finally seen, they can inspire not just awe, but understanding, respect, and the courage to pursue one's own dreams without fear.